I'd like to call to order the July 8th, 2015 meeting. Welcome to Virginia Beach Planning Commission. My name is Jeff Hodson. I'm the chairman of the commission. Before we get started, I have asked Ed Whedon to please lead us in prayer. This will be followed by the pledge led by Commissioner Kwasny. Please stand.
Oh, merciful Father in heaven, we just give thanks to you today, Lord God, for being in our presence, for waking us up, starting us on our way, Lord, clothed in our right mind. Lord, we ask that you make your presence known among this commission, among the people in this chamber today, Lord God. We ask you to make sure that the results that come out of this meeting, Lord God, benefit the people of the city, Lord God, as well as give you all the honor and glory. And we ask you, Lord, to go before us, to lead us, above us, to lift us, beneath us to support us, and behind us to protect us. It's in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Whedon, for the prayer, and Dr. Kwasny for the pledge. Next, I've asked Commissioner Phil Russo to please introduce the members.
Thank you, Mr. Hodson. Seated all the way to my right is our City Attorney, Bill McCauley. Seated next to Bill is Jack Wall. Jack is a civil engineer, and he represents the Rose Hall District on the commission. Seated next to Jack is Dr. Karen Beardsley Kwasny. Dr. Karen is a professor of literature and cultural studies at St. Leo University, and Dr. Karen represents the Princess Anne District. Seated next to Dr. Karen is Dee Oliver. Dee is an at-large member of the commission, and she is a funeral director. Next to Dee is Ron Ripley. Ron is in real estate management and development, and he is also an at-large member of the commission. My name is Phil Russo. I'm an attorney. I'm secretary of the commission, and I'm also an at-large member of the planning commission. As stated earlier, next to me is Jeff Hodson. Jeff is our chairman. He represents the Beach District, and he is in real estate management. To Jeff's left is Bob Thornton. Bob is vice chairman of the commission. He represents the Lynn Haven District, and he is in commercial real estate sales, leasing, and development. Next to Bob is Jan Rosinski. Jan is a property manager, and she represents the Centerville District. Next to Jan is Mike Inman. Mike is an attorney, and he is an at-large member of the Planning Commission. Next to Mike is David Weiner. David is in commercial sales, and he represents the Kempsville District. Next to David is Ross Brockwell. Ross is a structural engineer, and he represents the Bayside District. And then seated next to Ross is the Director of Planning, Jack Whitney. Jack, if you would introduce your staff who are present.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. It's always a pleasure. Seated next to me until he got up and walked out is Mr. Ed Whedon, who is channeling a little Johnny Cash today, reminding us all to walk the line, and I'm sure we will. From the planning staff, on the front row from left to right, Mr. Kevin Kemp, Stephen White, Carolyn Smith, and Christine Gay. And behind them, embedded a little bit in the audience, is our summer intern, Gunther Gallagher, and of course, our zoning administrator, Karen Lasley. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Next, I've asked Commissioner Jan Rosinski to please read the rules that we use to govern this meeting.
Thank you, Chairman Hodgson. The Virginia Beach Planning Commission takes pride in being fair and courteous to all parties in attendance. It is important that all involved understand how the Commission normally conducts its meetings. It is equally important that everyone treat each other and the members of this Commission with respect and civility. The Commission requests that if you have a cell phone that you please silence or turn it off at this time. This is an abbreviated explanation of the rules. A complete set of the rules is found in the front of the Planning Commission agenda. Following is the order of business for this public hearing. Withdrawals and deferrals. The chairman will ask if there's any request for a withdrawal or referral on the agenda. Consideration of these requests will be made first. Consent agenda. The second order of business is the consideration of the consent agenda, which are those items which the Planning Commission believes are unopposed and have favorable staff recommendation. Then the regular agenda. The commission will then proceed with the remaining items on the agenda. Please note that actions taken today by the commission are in the form of a recommendation to the City Council. The final decision on approval or disapproval of any item is made by the Virginia Beach City Council. The commission thanks you for your attendance. We hope that you experience today leaves you feeling that you've been heard and respected. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Rosinski. Before we get started, I think it's important to let everybody know that the landscape of the commission is going to change after this month. Next month, it will not look like this. And I promised the individual that was leaving that I would not say their name, so I'm going to honor that. But it is important to let everybody know that this individual has been a mentor, a friend to me when I came on 5 years ago, and I sat in Jack's seat initially. And I was sitting over there wondering, what am I doing up here? And this individual helped me get through the process, treated me with respect. And when I ended up in Bob's chair here, they kept the encouragement going and somehow ended up in this seat, which I still don't know how that happened. But I really appreciate this individual. This individual has served this commission well, has the City of Virginia Beach, the planning department, and I believe has put in 40 years of service to the City of Virginia Beach. And this individual is smart, obviously funny, that we all know, and very forward-thinking. And it's going to be a tremendous loss for the Planning Commission, the city, the planning department, everybody involved. And I think all my fellow workers all around here would have the same sentiment about this individual. So I want to say good luck in retirement and wish you the best, many happy years. And I was able to do that without mentioning Jack's name. So I just like to say you'll see next month who I am speaking of. So thank you. Before we go on, let's see, the next item of business is the deferrals or withdrawn items. If you have any item to be withdrawn or deferred, if you would please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Les Watson. I'm a local attorney, and I represent the applicant in item D2, Harrison, Virginia Atlantic, and we're requesting an indefinite deferral.
Thank you. Does anyone have any objections to this item being deferred? Mr. Rodon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I say anything else, ditto to what you said. We will all miss the unnamed individual that we all respect very much. Case number 5, CCW Development Associates, indefinite deferral, but we will be back to see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any objections to this item being deferred? Are there any other items to be deferred? It has been brought to the chair's attention that agenda item D2 is also requesting deferral. Is there any objection?
No, number 9.
Oh, I'm sorry. Number 9. Is there any objection to agenda item number 9 being deferred? Do I have a motion on the deferred items?
So moved.
D2.
Motion made by Commissioner Rosinski, seconded by, I'm sorry, Commissioner Weiner, for deferral of agenda items 5, 9, and D2. We're now ready to vote.
Vote is open. By a vote of 11-0, the commission has deferred items 5, 9, and D2.
The next items we'll address are those to be placed on the consent agenda. The vice chair will now handle this portion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This afternoon, we have 9 items on the consent agenda. The first first agenda item will be item number 2. This is an application of Lorraine Tucker for a conditional use permit, automobile service station, fuel sales with convenience store on property located at 300 South Rosemont, District 6, at the beach. Is there a representative here for this?
Good afternoon, Chairman Hodgson, members of the commission. My name is Steve Romine, local attorney for Lorraine Tucker, the applicant, on behalf of 7-Eleven. First, I want to thank you for placing us on the consent agenda. The 12 conditions in the application are acceptable to the client. I'd also be remiss if I didn't congratulate the unnamed planning director for exemplary service, and I'll stand by for questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any opposition to this matter being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chair has asked Commissioner Rosinski to speak on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. The applicant requests a conditional use permit to allow the redevelopment of the site of 3,260 square feet convenience store, a fuel canopy, and 4 fueling stations. A wedge-shaped building will be constructed in the northeast corner of the site. The fuel canopy, parking, and vehicular access occupy the majority of the remaining site. Access to the site will be via 2 curb cuts, one on South Rosemont Road and one on South Plaza Trail. 3 existing curb cuts will be removed. The applicant will dedicate the property line along South Rosemont Road to the city to accommodate a new right turn lane and to place a public sidewalk along South Rosemont Road entirely in the right-of-way. A public sidewalk will also be added where the other 2 curb cuts are being removed to provide a continuous sidewalk along all 3 of the right-of-ways. The submitted elevation drawings show a 1-story, 3-sided square 7-Eleven convenience store. The primary exterior materials proposed is brick. The proposed redevelopment that is really needed for this deteriorated property. It's in a very highly visible area. The proposed site upgrades and the architectural design, in the staff's opinion, are a welcome improvement to the site. The proposed use is consistent with the commercial nature of the intersection of South Rosemont Road and South Plaza Trail. Furthermore, the proposed design is generally consistent with the comprehensive plan guidelines for suburban area and zoning ordinance for retail design guidelines. Based on the findings and the staff's recommendation for approval with the conditions below, which are all agreeable to the applicant, the Planning Commission has placed it on the consent agenda.
Thank you. The next matter is agenda item number 4. This is an application of Studio Evolve for a modification of conditions of a conditional use permit for a tattoo parlor approved on May the 11th of 2010 on property located at 512 South Independence Boulevard, Suite 100, District 3, Rose Hall. Is there someone to speak for this matter?
Hi, Gabriel CC, thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Now what?
Is there any opposition to this matter being placed on the consent agenda? The conditions acceptable to you?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, sir.
That's it?
That's it? The chair has asked Commissioner Wall to read this into the record for us.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thornton. The applicant is requesting to modify the existing conditional use permit in order to expand into and occupy the entire 3,500 square foot building. The building is located in a small office complex consisting of 5 buildings. Tattoo services will continue to be offered by appointment only, and the expansion will provide for up to 16 artists. The existing conditional use permit was granted on May 11th, 2010, allowing the 1,500 square foot tattoo studio. And the proposed expansion is generally consistent with the comprehensive plan's land use policies for the suburban area regarding reinforcing commercial uses, and is, in the staff's opinion, compatible with the surrounding area. As such, with the 6 conditions acceptable to the applicants, as such, staff recommends approval of this, Anyway, for these reasons, we have placed the Studio Evolve LLC on the consent agenda.
Thank you. The next matter on the consent agenda is item number 6. This is an application of Wave Church for a modification of conditions of a conditional use permit for a religious use facility approved on July the 11th of '06 on property located at 2655 Seaboard Road, District 7, Princess Anne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. For the record, Billy Garrington on behalf of the applicant, Wave Church. The 6 conditions in the staff write-up are total agreement with our clients. And let me thank Stephen White very much for his participation and his help in this. We wouldn't be standing here this quickly if it were not for some very generous time that he gave to us, and I just wanted to make sure we thank him publicly for all the assistance he gave us on this case and on case number 7 also.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this matter being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chair has asked Dr. Karen to review this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. This is a request for a modification of a conditional use permit for a religious facility to allow placement of 1 modular classroom behind the building. A conditional use permit permitting a religious use was approved by the City Council on July 11, 2006. The conditional use permit has 11 conditions. Condition 1 requires that the site be developed in substantial conformance with the approved plan. The applicant has a need for additional classroom space and accordingly is requesting modification of the use permit to allow a modular classroom unit to be placed adjacent to the existing building. The portable modular classroom unit has a floor area of 1440 square feet with an overall size of 24 feet by 60 feet. The proposed location for the unit is at the northwestern end of the stormwater management pond with the 60-foot side facing the pond. The location selected for the proposed modular unit is, in staff's opinion, the best alternative for this property in its current state of development. The site is located in the transition area, and while this proposal is atypical of the type of development to which the transition area design guidelines are oriented, the issue of appearance is important, in particular, the view from adjacent roadways. Development should be screened with substantial setbacks with landscaping berms, trees, buffers, and trails. In this case, due to the location of the church on the site, visibility of the modular unit is already limited, and when the church and site are developed, a vegetated berm was installed around the southern and eastern sides of the church. The portable classroom trailer will have a very low visibility from Seaboard Road due to its location behind the building and the play area. To reduce the starkness of the modular unit, foundation landscape planting should be installed around the base. Staff has recommended a condition below to that effect. Planning Commission places this item on the consent agenda.
Thank you. The next matter is agenda item number 7. This is an application of Wave Church for a modification of conditions of a conditional use permit for a religious use approved on October 14, 2003 on property located at 1000 North Great Neck Road in District 5, Lynn Haven.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. Again, for the record, Billy Garrington on behalf of the applicant, Wave Church. Just as in case number 6, the 6 conditions that are a part of this staff write-up are in total agreement with us, and we thank you and the staff for putting this on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this matter being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chair has asked Commissioner Russo to review this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. This is basically the same application as number 6. It's just at Wave Church on Great Neck Road, and it's for 2 modular units. The site of the units are, in staff's opinion, a good alternative for the property. It's going to be in the rear of the building, and the rear of the building has the appearance and acts as the service side of the church complex. The staff felt that this was a good use for the church, and the commission agreed and determined to place this on the consent agenda.
Thank you. The next matter on the consent agenda is item number 8. This is an application of PF Hilltop for a conditional use permit, an indoor recreation facility on property located at 1944 Laskin Road, District 5, Lynn Haven.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Eddie Verdon, Virginia Beach attorney representing PH Hilltop LLC and Regency Hilltop Associates LLC. We appreciate this item being placed on the consent agenda and appreciate Christine not even putting one condition on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this matter being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chair has asked Commissioner Oliver to review this matter.
Thank you, Commissioner Thornton. This applicant is proposing to occupy an existing vacant unit located in the Regency Hilltop Shopping Center with a gym. The site is zoned B2 Business District and is located in the Accident Prudential Zone 2. It experiences on average more than 75 decibels of noise daily. In the B2 Business District, recreational facilities other than those of an outdoor nature with a floor area greater than 7,500 square feet require a conditional use permit for indoor recreation. The Regency Hilltop Center fronts the north side of Alaskan Road and the west side of Regency Road. The gym will occupy 21,000 square feet of unit, 20 which is located towards the rear of the site. There are over 340 parking spaces relatively adjacent to this building. With the exception of signage, there's no physical changes are proposed to the exterior of the building. The proposed use is compatible with other commercial uses located in the Regency Hill Shopping Center and should not have a negative effect on any of the adjacent properties. The staff recommended approval of this request, and therefore we've placed it on the consent agenda.
Thank you. The next matter is item number 10. This is an application of Outdoor Resorts of Virginia Beach Condominium Association for a conditional use permit recreational resort community on property located at 3665 South Sandpiper Road, District 7, Princess Anne.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. My name is John Richardson. I'm a local attorney. I represent the applicant. We are more than happy with the conditions stated. We thank Mrs. Lastly for her hard work on this application. She went above and beyond the call of duty on this one. It's been tricky, and she's figured everything out, and we're very happy with the result. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this matter being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chair has asked Commissioner Inman to review the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. This item is a little bit unusual and did require a lot of work on all parties involved. It's a condominium that's located in the Sandbridge area, 63 acres in size, and this was originally begun as 250 campsites back in 1966. Soon after it opened, management began to rent sites for an entire year, providing renters the convenience of leaving their trailers in place. Shortly thereafter, it became a condominium in order to allow owners to make more permanent improvements to the sites. Outdoor Resorts property is located within the floodplain, and the city is working with the property owners to bring the development into compliance with the city's floodplain ordinance. This effort is a result of a community assistance visit by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, which identified the deficiencies in the city's floodplain management program that needed to be corrected, including enforcement in campgrounds and mobile home parks. In order to be compliant with the floodplain regulations, each unit must meet one of the following options. It has to be a recreational vehicle placed in place no longer than 180 days per year, must be fully licensed, ready for highway use. Or option 2, the unit must meet requirements for manufactured homes to include permanent foundation and anchoring elevated to base flood level. Enclosures below base flood elevation must use flexible skirting or flood-resistant materials that are properly vented. So because the Outdoor Resorts is technically zoned only for campground use, permits for permanent structures cannot be issued unless this application is approved. And to facilitate floodplain ordinance compliance, the city adopted a zoning ordinance amendment creating a recreational resort community, which allows a wider variety of temporary housing unit types. And that ordinance includes criteria such as minimum area, density, parking, amenities, signage, housing types, green development features, and emergency vehicular access. So the staff recommends approval of this request, subject to the conditions listed below. There's a number of conditions to which Mr. Richardson, as he said, the applicant agrees. Because the recreational vehicles and park model trailers, approval will have of the owners to have manufactured cottages or cottages built on site that have the same footprint as a park model trailer, but are an upgrade in quality and appearance. The landscape bed will be installed adjacent to Back Bay and help improve water quality. Most importantly, approval of this conditional use permit will allow building permits to be issued to bring outdoor resort units into compliance with the floodplain ordinance.
Mr. Inman, Mr. Chairman, does that include the revised condition 2 as part of your consent agenda that Karen passed out this morning?
There is a revised condition.
Yes, Mr. Richardson, have you seen number 2, revised condition number 2?
I have, Mr. Thornton.
Okay,
That was sent to me yesterday afternoon, so that's, it was their mistake that caused the necessity for that.
Okay.
So we apologize for that, but we thank her for straightening that out. So it's acceptable as revised.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. The next items, actually, I'm going to combine number 11 and number 12. These are amendments to the zoning ordinance. 11 is an ordinance to amend Section 901 of the city zoning ordinance to add group homes as a conditional use in B4 mixed use. Item number 12 is an ordinance to amend Section 111 of the city zoning ordinance pertaining to the definition of a family daycare. And I'm going to reverse the order a little bit. Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chair has asked Dr. White to review these matters on behalf of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. The amendment number 11 for group homes, this would allow group homes as a conditional use permit in the B4 mixed use district. A group home is any kind of congregate living, such as a homeless shelter, where the occupants don't meet the zoning ordinance definition of senior housing or family, or any other definition where we could put them in. So this is an effort to introduce group homes as such as a homeless shelter into the B4 mixed use district. B4 mixed use will allow residential, commercial, so we think it's a suitable district for that type of use, and we are recommending approval of that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Number 12, for family daycare homes, that is the result of the General Assembly taking action on how a family daycare home is defined, and put it as short as I can. It reduces the number from 5 to 4 in terms of the threshold at which you are termed a family daycare home.
Okay, thank you, Dr. White. Next item is item number D1. This is an application of Gary Collier for a conditional use permit, an automobile repair garage on property located at 416 Davis Street. Is there someone here to speak on this matter, an applicant? Okay, then we will assume that the conditions are acceptable. Is there any objection to this matter being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chair has asked Commissioner Weiner to review this matter for us.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. The subject site is located on Davis Street in an area that is predominantly commercial in nature, with several non-conforming residential lots mixed in. 2 one-story industrial warehouse buildings exist on the site. An automotive repair facility previously occupied one of the buildings, but has since relocated. The applicant desires to leave a portion of the vacant building and to the new automobile repair facility. Staff was not able to locate a previous conditional use permit for the automobile repair, thus this application is required. The proposed automobile repair facility will occupy 2,000 square feet of the building adjacent to the northern property line. No changes to proposed to the exterior of the building. The applicant states that all automotive repair work will take place inside the building, and no portion of the site will be used for the exterior storage of junk cars, parts, tires, or other items associated with the repair facility. The repair facility will perform body work and will have a paint booth. The proposed hours are 7:30 to 5:30 p.m. The business is anticipated to employ about 10 people. Staff recommends approval, and we have put it on the consent agenda.
Thank you. The next item, which is the last item on the consent agenda, is item number D4. This is an application of 2798 Dean LLC for a conditional use permit for bulk storage on property located at 2798 Dean Drive, District 6 in the Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. For the record, Billy Garrington on behalf of the applicant, 2798 Dean Drive LLC. The two conditions and the staff write-up are agreeable, and we thank you for placing this on the consent agenda. And I apologize for messing up the disclosure statement, but that won't be the last time I'll be making that apology to you, I can promise you. That disclosure statement has caused more angst than anything that y'all have done in the last 10 years, so. But I apologize for not getting it right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this matter being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chair has asked Commissioner Ripley to review the matter.
Thank you. This is a parcel of property. It contains 1.9 acres. It's located at the east end of Dean Drive, which is a small industrial strip off of the expressway between Norfolk and Southern right-of-way and the expressway. Everything in this road is used as an industrial-type manner, so this is a use that really kind of falls into an appropriate use to be used industrially. What's occurred here is that the property was used as a storage yard, but the new buyer took the storage yard and expanded it, and apparently he needs a conditional use permit to do the use that he's doing, so that's why he's here. In the process of doing that, it was discovered that, and I'm not sure which one was discovered first, but there were some environmental issues which I'll comment on, but it's out of our purview here. But it's, this property is in the RPA, which is an environmentally sensitive area for any of the properties within our city, and you need to make sure you're okay with the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Board, the DEQ, and the Corps of Engineers, none of which was approached, and so the applicant has had to deal with that, and he's in the process of dealing with that at the moment, as I understand. We're here to talk about land use, and the land use itself, we think, is appropriate. This property is in the APZ1, which is a accident prudential zone for the Oceana base, and it's in the highest noise zone, 75 plus. It's also in the Lynn Haven Strategic Growth Area, which the plan for the strategic growth area calls for more of an urban, more of a development opportunities for startup business and technology innovations, and there's some design criteria that the plan would like to see. But the plan is in the early stages, and one of the conditions is that the conditional use permit is for a period of 10 years, because the use that we will be approving here is appropriate for now, but it may change in the future. So that's the idea. And so we got to give time for the plan to work its way out. We've got to be practical with land use, let people use their land, and so they get an economic return. And it's as long as it's appropriate. So with all that said, the staff recommended approval, and the Planning Commission felt that it was appropriate for consent.
Thank you, Mr. Ripley. Mr. Chairman, that was the last item on the consent agenda. I would like to move to approve consent agenda items number 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, D1, and D4.
Motion made by Vice Chairman Thornton. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Inman. We are ready to vote.
Vote is open. I voted 11-0. The commission has approved items 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, D1, and D4 for consent.
I'd like to thank all the applicants who had a matter on today's consent agenda. These items will now be scheduled for hearing on City Council. We'll now address the remaining matters on our agenda, and the secretary will call the first item.
Mr. Chairman, the first matter on the agenda is application number 1 of Eurotech Service Center LLC. It's an application for a conditional use permit, automobile repair garage on property located at 207-209 Pennsylvania Avenue, District 4, Bayside. Mr. Bourdon.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, again, for the record, Eddie Bourdon, Chief's Attorney representing the applicant. Mr. George Louisi is here this afternoon along with the project's architect, Chris Elam. I'll try to be brief. I know this was on the consent agenda. Back in March, or actually I think it would have been February, we were here. As Kevin Kemp advised this morning, I think you all are aware, Mr. Louisi has been, attempting and will continue to attempt to assemble properties in this area for future redevelopment in accordance with the strategic growth area plans for this area, which are obviously a few years down the road in occurring. But we came forward with a use permit for this use up on property to the north. And as it was going through and getting approval by council in March, the opportunity came up for him to acquire a large parcel adjacent to it on the north side. This is what happened earlier this year. That closing took place in May, if my memory serves me, and thus, with the opportunity to do a better development and not this particular use, he's abandoned that and has moved that down to this piece of property. The other thing you may recall, it's in, again, the write-up that didn't get discussed in the informal this morning, is that a substantial portion of the work that will be done on vehicles in this facility are for my client's own, vehicles for sale. It is for the public, but it will be, we're quite confident, a large percentage of the use will be on their own vehicles. So I want to give you that. All 8 of the conditions are acceptable to my client, and recognizing the 8th one being the 10-year limitation on the use. And obviously, there's an investment being made on this piece of property with the improvements over what is there today. We have no issue whatsoever with, and it makes perfectly good sense, that the employee parking would be on the second lot, the vacant lot that he owns on the same block, a couple of properties north of the subject site. And so before this goes to the city council, we will remove that notation on the plan of employee parking and the rear of the 2 drive aisles or alleys down the sides of the building. That will not be employee parking. There is, as you all have seen and discussed this morning, there's certainly room out here for someone to pull in who's going to have their car serviced. But the other thing I want to mention is the circulation. Cars that are serviced in the building, they come in on the north side through that garage. They'll be serviced inside the building and then will come out on this side. So there is plenty of room inside the building for vehicles to be parked and for really being serviced, I don't want to say parked. And there's also the ability to stack vehicles on the outside that are being worked on, because we'll have the keys and they'll be under the control of the business. So we absolutely don't believe that there's going to be any substantial problem with regard to parking. And again, primarily because a large percentage of the vehicles will be our own vehicles to begin with. The 8 conditions are all acceptable to my client, and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Bourdon? Thank you.
Our first speaker in opposition is James DeLutis.
Thank you. My name is James DeLutis. I own a property adjacent to the property in question. And the issues I have at hand is because the side of my building faces the front of this facility is the parking issue. Now, I've read through things and it says it requires 5 parking spaces. Well, one of them is a handicap space in the front, and they're putting 2 parking spaces all the way down the 2 driveways on the end, which is 20 feet wide, with a wall on each side. Now, I understand a normal parking space is probably 10 feet wide, but you've got part of the next space to open your door into. I don't see how you're going to function with 2 parking spaces in each one of these driveways with a wall on each side of the 2 parking spaces. Secondly, Mr. Bourdon just stated that they'll probably use the driveway to store cars, which eliminates the use of those parking spaces, which means people are going to park across the street and walk over there to do what they have to do and leave their cars on the side of my building. I had this issue 15 years ago when the building now that's at Hydro Hose directly across me was a towing and repair company, and the whole place was full, no place to park. They parked across the street, and I was having almost physical confrontations almost every day. As it is now, I have a building to the north of me that is a 3,000 square foot facility that has way too many vehicles for his parking lot as it is. The parking's a huge issue. I bought a building with 20-something parking spaces, and if people want to run a business in this area, and I'm all for business and people doing what they need to do, but they need to invest in the facility and have the ability to have enough parking for the people that come in and out. And I don't see how 2 lots up the street, you're going to come in as a customer, and I realize they may do a lot of work for their own car sale facility, but what happens to the people that come back to have work done? Do they know, hey, I can park up the street and walk down? They're not going to do that. So I have huge opposition to this, and I see it being a major problem. Basically, this place has 1 parking space in front of it, and it's a handicap space. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions for Mr. DeLutis?
Go ahead.
Mr. Brockwell?
No, Phil, go ahead.
Oh,
So, sir, you're saying that right now, as it's currently situated, you have a problem with the parking from this area?
It's already a problem.
Okay.
I mean, I have Superior Services next door to me. We've worked things out equitably, but he's got probably 8 or 10 vehicles that are there every day, and then he's got a fleet of vehicles that kind of come in and out. That's been a problem.
How many vehicles park there currently?
At which?
At the subject site, the
The new site?
Yeah, at the site.
Across the street where they're
Yeah.
proposing? Nobody parks there right now. It's not developed.
Okay, so, okay, I thought you said that you.
No, I'm talking about my next door neighbor.
Okay.
There's a huge parking issue in that business district right now. I mean, there's a lot of small buildings that only offer basically 4 spaces in the front, which is in a lot of cases all that's required, but they've got more than enough people to fill those, so they have to double them up or find other places to park.
Okay. Have you had a chance to speak with the applicant about this?
I have not.
Okay. Do you know who he is? I mean,
No, I don't.
okay. I mean, I'd suggest you talk to him and work out something. I'm sure this is a problem that he probably understands, and I'm sure he wants to be a good corporate citizen. I assume if you talk to Mr. Bourdon also, you'd be able
I'm
to.
just saying that if we look at this realistically, I don't see where there's going to be parking in front of the building that's going to be adequate for customers or people to come in and out or even leave cars. If they leave cars in the 2 driveways like they're proposing, there's no parking left. So where do people park if they're open from 7:30 in the morning until 5:30 at night? And realistically, have you ever seen a car repair shop that doesn't have cars in and around it all the time? Because that's what they do. People drop them off, people pick them up, whether they're their own cars or not. It's a constant in and out situation. That's what the auto business is about. And I just don't see how 5 spaces, even though that's what's mandated, I don't see how those particular 5 spaces are going to work.
Mr. Brockwell?
I was just going to ask if you had a chance, by any chance, to come to the informal session this morning.
No.
Because just to let you know, we had a pretty lengthy discussion about this. I mean,
Oh, no, I didn't have a chance.
we all appreciate the parking issue. We spent the majority of our time on this item talking about that issue. And one particular aspect of it, those spots, if I understand, that are there now are not compliant because you back out into the right-of-way. So our understanding is if it's redeveloped, something has to happen to those spots anyway. So change in the parking is going to come if that's redeveloped. So we spent a good deal of time talking about what we can do to mitigate your concern and what might happen functionally when this is done. And I think a couple of things made us feel better about it. The satellite parking is one, but we understand what your position is.
Well, the
on
satellite parking, I understand for the employees, that sort of thing, or their own vehicles, but if somebody's coming in or out, they don't know the satellite parking, they don't know that they're gonna have to walk 150 feet down the street to come in and out.
Right, and we understand, and Mr. Verdone said, they were immediately agreeable to changing the designation of those parking spaces and trying to work something out functionally. They're aware of your concern too, and we were reassured by the fact that they immediately spoke up and said, they want to be good neighbors. There's a lot of confidence in this body that they're going to be good neighbors about it, and I think I'm pretty confident myself that something can be worked out to make this functional. And as far as the project goes, it's a good redevelopment of it. It's identical to something we approved earlier. And
I just don't want to repeat of what I went through years ago, because
Right.
it was literally almost every day, almost a physical confrontation. And I don't understand people how they don't know that you can't park at a facility and then walk across the street to a different facility. It's one thing if it was in a strip mall and you park down the end in front of somebody else's store and walk down to this one, it's a strip mall, it's open parking. But when you park across the street at a different business and walk across to another one, you have to know you're doing something wrong.
Right.
But then you go out and you protect your interest, and you're being the one that's demonized.
No, we understand. I just wanted to reassure
And
you.
I see the issue coming up, and I'd like to address it beforehand, that's all.
Right, and we're pretty confident that your neighbor doesn't want to see that problem either. So I think the way things are written and conditioned and with the things they've agreed to, we have confidence that functionally it'll work, and that's why we put it on a consent agenda. But I just wanted you to know that we're not dismissing your concern, and we actually spent some time talking.
I appreciate it.
Can you take the pointer and point at where your building is located? You're across the street. The pointer's
point
right on the end
right
of
on
this
the,
dais.
Oh, this guy here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is my building right here.
The square building on the corner.
This one right here on the corner of Pennsylvania and Cleveland.
So you've got parking
I have parking
on,
all the way across the front and all the way down the side, and I have parking in this alley. Now, this is Superior Services, who has a fleet of vehicles, which normally they take them home, but during the day, there's at least 8 cars parked in front of that. There's a full complement of cars because I have a staff of 20 to 22, so my parking lot pretty much stays full. And right now, what they're proposing is this alley and that alley with 2 spaces all the way in the very end of it and 1 handicap space in the front. And I don't see how that's even going to be viable.
well, how did you resolve the problem? Do you mark your spaces employees only, or do you notice the public that this is just not public parking? And
Well,
did you do that before? When you
I
had
don't really have a problem with people not knowing because it's a standalone building. And basically, from this alley this way is all our parking area. It's all lined. There's no other real reason for anybody to park and go anywhere else because it's a business district. It's not a retail or anything like that. So it's not as if people are parking and walking around and shopping for the day or anything.
So you have adequate parking for your business as it stands today?
Yes, I do.
And your concern is that
I'm one of the few that does.
these
But the
people...
same when this guy here, right here across the street from me, had a garage and they were all kinds of cars, people were parking over here and walking across the street because there was no parking there because his lot was full. And I see the same issue eventually coming up with, I had the issues with these guys next door when they used to keep all their trucks because they would come in the morning, park down the side of my building, and my people would come to work and couldn't park and come to work on time. My people were coming in late. So we resolved that, and he actually changed his hours to they start at 7, so they're usually in and out before we get there, and that works.
Well, I feel like Commissioner Brockwell, that I think, this area is, in the next 10 years, going to go through a lot of redevelopment. You're going to see these parking issues resolved, older buildings torn down. And I think it's just something that you've certainly got the right to post your property.
Oh,
If
absolutely.
people start encroaching in your parking spaces, you can police it as best as you can. But we have to deal with this matter and give this application due process and let this guy get on with building a new building and creating a new business there. So, and I feel like he does. I feel like the applicant is going to be a responsible citizen and do what he's supposed to do. And if not, I mean, I would recommend you meet with him and talk to him and let him know your concerns before that building comes down.
Is the building being rebuilt, or is it just being new facade?
I'm not 100% sure. Is it going to be torn down or redeveloped?
It's just a facade renovation.
Okay. Thank you.
If the whole building were being torn down, then they would have to reevaluate the site and have a full site plan review and accommodate parking differently. But it's just a renovation.
Kind of to tag on what Bob just said, if one of their customers parks in your spot and you have the first car towed, and that customer goes back to get their car and find out it's been towed, I'd like to think that the owner of that business is going to do everything he can to let his customers know not to park there.
But you know that's going to create issues. The issue is it's going to create issues.
Yeah,
And now that burden's put on me.
I understand.
And I didn't create this part of it, but now I have to respond to it.
Yeah.
And there's no easy fix at that point. Well, I was only gone a few minutes. It's like a parking ticket. Hey, I was only gone 5 minutes. It doesn't matter. The ticket's written. Your car's gone. I mean, and the issue came into the same thing with my next door neighbor. Until I blocked in some of his vehicles to where they couldn't get out and go to work, it wasn't a big deal until it started costing him money. But
Right.
when it was costing me money and my people couldn't get to work because they couldn't park in my parking spaces, it wasn't an issue for him. And that's the issue I see happening with this. Until cars start getting towed and people start getting ticked off,
Yeah.
nothing's going to get done. I would like to avoid that.
I understand.
And based on what you're telling me is here, I don't think we're going to be able to avoid that, because they only require 5 spaces. They're showing you where they are. I'm telling you they're not going to work. Eddie stood right here and said, basically, they're not going to work because they're going to park cars in the alleyway. So now there's no parking spaces. So,
Are there any other questions? Thanks.
thank
for
you
coming
very
down.
much.
Mr. Burdon.
If you'll turn to page 12 in your staff report, and maybe I should have been a little more thorough, and I appreciate Mr. DeLutis's comments, and even though they want to spin them a certain way, there's nobody who has a greater investment in this area than Mr. Louisu. Mr. Louisu, and we'll be happy to talk to Mr. DeLutis outside when we're done. He's not going to have a problem with George. And if you look at page 12 in your write-up, that's probably not up here on the PowerPoint, you'll see the subject property down the bottom of that exhibit, and then just to the north you see the vacant lot that he owns, as well as the property to the west that he has under lease agreement, and the property across the street, all of which he has control of, all of which are parking. 100 cars he can park in these lots that he owns or has under long-term lease. On site, there are 2 22-foot wide by 120-foot long, 125-foot long drive aisles. And, this is not a shopping center. This is where people drop their car. Again, we hope that we have this problem. George hopes he has a lot of outside customers. He knows he has a lot of his own vehicles to deal with. Those who drop their vehicles off, typically they're going to leave and come back. They could stay, but what happens is you control the vehicles. You can stack cars that are waiting to be serviced in those 2 drive aisles. That will hold, even staying out of the green area that we're creating, roughly 21 cars can be stacked there. 8 cars can be and will be inside the building being, potentially serviced or waiting to be serviced. They're not 8 bays, but there's room to park 8 vehicles inside the building. He has more parking than anybody out there, bar none, available to him. Again, not going to argue with, I've got pictures of the gentleman's property, and he's got cars, parked all around it. I'm sure they're employees, all perfectly fine, perfectly good. But Mr. Louisu is not going to be a problem for this gentleman because he has all the parking and then some that's necessary for them to, if you have a day when, 4 or 5 people come drop the car off to get worked on, they can move it down and park it in the lot until they need to, if they don't have room in the building itself to park the car while it's waiting to be serviced, and all the service takes place in the building. So because Mr. Louisu is assembling properties in this area, there couldn't be a better person to be proposing this facility, and the interior of the building is being completely gutted and renovated, and the exterior on the front is, but the building itself's not coming down. Any questions, be happy to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Verdon?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, we will now close the public hearing and open it up for discussion amongst the commissioners. Anybody like to start?
Yeah.
Mr. Brockwell.
If nobody has anything, I'll start. And I'm prepared to make a motion to support it. I just want to say again, I think your concerns, Mr. DeLutis, are well recognized and well discussed, and I think the merits of this project, aside from that issue, are many. It's an aesthetic improvement. It's revitalizing a vacant building. It's consistent with our approach to the comprehensive plan, and I have every confidence that the owner has as much interest as anyone in being a good neighbor and making it work. So I think there's every reason to support it. So unless we want to discuss it more, I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application.
Anybody else, or anybody like to make a second? Mr. Inman.
I would only say that I certainly support it also for the reasons that have been stated before, and I think it's unfortunate that the gentleman, the neighbor, did not take it upon himself to have a conversation with the applicant or his attorney before today to get himself comfortable with the type of person he was and what commitments he was willing to make about the parking. And I think it's a good thing he did come down and make his concerns known. And I'm sure that he's been heard. And I feel like from what we've heard about the applicant that his concerns will not materialize. So I would support the motion to approve, which hadn't been made yet. I'll make one.
No, I'll make it. I mean, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think, like you said, Mr. DeLutis, now you're exactly right. You should be proactive about this, and I think the owner has the same feeling. So I think now that we've talked about it, we have every opportunity to do so and work it out. So that being said, I move we approve this application.
Motion made by Commissioner Brockwell. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Inman. Before we vote, I would appreciate if Mr. Verdon would, if you have time, would make an introduction between the two parties. That would go a long ways. So motion made by Commissioner Brockwell, second by Commissioner Inman. We're ready to vote.
Vote is open. I vote 11-0. The Planning Commission has approved the application of Eurotech Service Center LLC.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, would you please call the...
The next matter is an application number 3, an application of Victoria Park Homeowners Association Incorporated for a discontinuance, closure, and abandonment of 2700, 2709 Guernsey Way, District 7, Princess Anne. And our first speaker is Mark Erb.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your service to Virginia Beach and for this opportunity to discuss our application for the closure of Guernsey Way.
Please state your name for the record.
I am Mark Erb for the Victoria Park Homeowners Association. We have concerns regarding the new Kellam High School public access from our neighborhood. We participated in the design vignettes for the high school as noted in the staff report, but feel our concerns were not adequately addressed or were dismissed altogether. The staff report references, and I quote, complaints and concerns from some Victoria Park residents. The proposed opening in the fence was never installed, thus eliminating pedestrian access. According to school board staff, there have been ongoing discussions and debate among residents in the vicinity of the school residents along North Landing and Victoria Park, as to whether a formal pedestrian access at this location is warranted. The only formal effort of which I am aware is the petition the community presented to the school board and the city council meeting in June of 2011. At that time, 49 of the 64 lots were developed, and all were contacted. 84 residents, voters, representing 46 of those 49 homes, signed the petition supporting the closing of access from Victoria Park to the high school. This was primarily due to traffic, parking, and vandalism of community and personal property concerns. We were led to believe that our voices were heard by both Chairman Edwards, who attended one of our homeowner association meetings, and Dr. Merrill, and the access was closed. Yes, the fence was vandalized, but instead of repairing the fence and seeking to hold the vandals accountable, it was left damaged for more than 6 months, encouraging access. Repaired once, it was vandalized again almost immediately. We commenced this application process last December in order to regain responsibility for the property that was initially intended to connect to another residential neighborhood and has been a recurring problem. However, in early June, we were informed 2 weeks before construction of a unilateral decision to install a gate. This was absent any formal public opportunity to comment. All contact with city council reps and school board reps asking to delay the construction to at least address all perspectives in a public forum were ignored. That's probably a little harsh. They were received, heard, however, no action was taken. The gate was installed and has already been vandalized. It is in that vein that we are here continuing to pursue the appropriate formal street closure. This public access raises a number of quality of life concerns that we believe have still not been adequately addressed or have been rejected. The viewer's rationale for recommending denial are: there are no sidewalks along North Landing Road. Walking or riding a bike along North Landing Road is extremely dangerous, but done frequently by students heading to and from Kellam High School. Maintaining the Guernsey Way right-of-way provides a safe alternative to North Landing Road. We agree, North Landing is extremely dangerous, but providing access through Victoria Park will encourage more walking and bike riding along North Landing Road, and thereby endorses, and I would say encourages, a much greater risk. If the school wanted to create a safer access from North Landing Road, their property has 2 frontages on North Landing itself, one of which is approximately 70 feet wide. They decided not to do that. As evidence in number 2, as evidence in the photograph provided as well as repeated reports of vandalism to the closed-off access, students and others continue to use the right-of-way to gain entry onto high school property. I've addressed the 3 cases of vandalism of the fence and now gate. To actually reward this illegal behavior would be disappointing. Those residents, voters that disagree with the decisions of our elected and appointed officials should use proper formal and public procedures to address their concerns, not criminal behavior. We expect our public officials and educators to reinforce proper and lawful methods for change. While this remains public access, it is our belief that these problems will continue and even increase. Private property and community property within Victoria Park has continued, not just vandalism of the school fence. Those concerns, the private as well as the community property, have been vandalism of brick mailboxes that have been damaged, trenched common area lawns, as well as personal people's residences. And at the end, and it doesn't show up on the picture there, at the end of Bending Birch Trail, there's a cul-de-sac which effectively became a lover's lane with cars parking, drinking, garbage left at the end of the lane. And police have been summoned for that. Number 3, stormwater infrastructure and public utilities are located within the right-of-way. If the right-of-way is closed, a minimum 40-foot wide easement with limited encroachment would be required. As we stated in our application, all easements for sewer, drainage, access to the Civil War gravesite would not be affected by this application. The intent of Victoria Park Homeowners Association is basically to take the two lots on either side of Guernsey Way, as you see in the picture there. Those are currently owned by the Homeowners Association, currently maintained by the Homeowners Association as open space, and maintain those as open space and make this one continuous open space that belongs to the Homeowners Association. Our desire is to assume direct responsibility for it and establish limited access for our community to the school and public areas. As we would be most affected by interruption of sewer services, we will be most vigilant in care and maintenance of this area. Currently, the city provides for no maintenance of this land. Our community has been providing biweekly maintenance for 4 years at our own expense. That's a minor consideration, I believe. Number 4, a street closure at this location is not consistent with the adopted public policy outlined in the comprehensive plan. The transition area, design guidelines, the master transportation plan, et cetera. Comprehensive plan's land use policies for the transition area emphasize bikeway and trail connectivity between land uses. All that's agreed, no dispute. Comprehensive plan and other guidelines were applied in the design of Victoria Park, taken into serious consideration. We do not believe the intent was to create increased traffic in residential neighborhoods. At design conception, the high school was not even a consideration. Had it been, our developer would have had the opportunity to resolve this problem before it comes to us now. All Victoria Park residents share ownership, access, and use of our approximately 30 acres of common area open space. The street closure will increase that area and provide our residents open access to all that Virginia Beach has to offer, while providing some ability and responsibility to limit the use of our neighborhood as a transit point, parking lot, and ultimately reducing the criminal mischief and vandalism that public access invites. Additionally, there's a precedent for private access to public facilities. That precedent would be Salt Meadow Bay Apartments up off of Laskin. They have a private gate to the Beach Garden Park, which is near the Beach Middle School, the ball field there, recreation facilities, playground, et cetera. We believe the staff recommendation, in summary, summarizes that terminating the public's ability to use the right-of-way permanently removes all future opportunities for cycling and pedestrian linkages between the neighborhood, the high school, and beyond. We believe this is an inaccurate statement. Closing the street will remove future opportunity for general public to use Victoria Park as an access point, thoroughfare, parking lot, shortcut to the high school, and city services beyond. It will reduce the opportunity incentive to trespass and loiter within our community as well as others. West Neck has had problems with trespassing coming from Courthouse Estates. Young kids, being kids, do what they do, shortest point between two lines, and decide the easiest way to get to wherever they're trying to go is through people's private property in West Neck. And I know that has concerned some of them. I don't know if anybody is here for West Neck or is even aware of this meeting. It will reduce, closing the street will reduce the opportunity incentive to trespass and loiter within our community as well as others. As that is never the intent for the street property that was required by the planning board and provided to the city by our developer, it would be disingenuous to now levy this additional burden and risk on the homeowners of Victoria Park. We continue to strongly believe the street should be closed and returned to the Victoria Park Homeowners Association as stated in our application. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Erb? I have a couple. Oh, go ahead.
So,
Mr. Ripley.
it sounds like to me the uses that you're suggesting that you would use it if you had control of this property would be the same. It would just limit the uses. Is that, am I hearing that right? You would be in control of who uses the gate and who uses this property.
We'd be responsible for the property itself.
So other than the access, and you mentioned open space, do you see this as meaningful open space? Meaningful meaning something that is constructive to use and the neighborhood would just flock to use it, or I know they have other community areas within your neighborhood. So my question is it an access primarily, or?
Primarily, it would be an access. I don't believe the way the open space originally designed for the community was supposed to be a well-manicured open space throughout the entire community.
So we're talking about access.
Financially, that has not been viable. The front entrance has been maintained on a weekly basis. The open space that you see in the photograph there is maintained on a bi-weekly with a tractor mowing type of deal. It doesn't lend itself to ball games or volleyball. We do use some of the open space. That would provide an opportunity to do that, but I would not see the community removing the sidewalk in order to provide a soccer field or something like that for our own residents.
And the example you used down at the beach, where it's an apartment community, I think you cited, they have private land and it's connected to a public right-of-way or public access easement or a public trail, if you will, to, I know, down to the beach or down to the
beach.
or to the school, yeah.
The Beach Garden Park, and I'm not familiar with the whole process as to what came first, whether the park was there and then Salt Meadow Bay Apartments was constructed and did their application. I'd have to defer to the planning board to tell me how that took place. The Salt Meadow Bay Apartments property abuts directly to
The access.
the Beach Garden Park. They have a gate. I went down there and saw it in between the 9 o'clock meeting this morning, and now they've got a sign, residents and guests only. There's a keypad on the gate that they maintain, I'm assuming. I don't think the city is paying for that. On the city side, in the park, there's a sidewalk, a little bit overgrown at this point, but that's what the city has. I'm assuming the city created that sidewalk to provide that connectivity to those apartments.
I think that might be right too, but I'm not sure either. But in their instance, they own the property and it's a city easement to it. In this case, the city owns the property, the right-of-way that you're asking to be closed, and they're saying they don't think they ought to close it. So that's the dilemma, obviously, and obviously that's the essence of your application.
Had the school been there ahead of time, I don't believe that our developer would have deeded the rights to the street to the city. The intent of that street, as was brought out in the staffing report, was always to connect to Manchester Station.
Yeah, you're
a
right.
108 home, similar community to Victoria Park.
Yeah, I
And
remember something
connect to
between
West
those
Neck.
two applications that wasn't exactly, that was a little controversial too, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But that's just my memory. My memory's not always accurate.
Wasn't involved with
Yes,
that.
okay.
I know when.
But anyway,
oh,
you've answered my question, and I thank you very much. Thank you.
I got a couple quick questions. You're representing the homeowners association?
Yes, sir.
Was the majority of the homeowner association against this?
Against,
For you closing this? Or did some of them want to leave it open?
closing the current gate that's there?
Yes, I mean-
Gate has only been there, sir, for
Or not the gate,
2
but
weeks.
wanting to get rid of this access. Does the majority of the community want to get rid of this access to the school?
The only formal petition that was circulated, where everybody concerned was communicated with and given an opportunity to either sign or not, was 4 years ago. And 4 years ago, as I said, it was 49 of the 64 lots with a total of 84 signatures were put on that petition to remove all access. The concern was, Burnsview Way doesn't belong to the community. If there's access through Victoria Park, we're going to create a thoroughfare. And that's exactly what took place. Even with the gate, with the fence closed, vandals came, kicked the thing open, and decided we now have access in a couple of places. They actually accessed through a couple of holes in the fence that they created.
Well, I think the only reason you have vandalism is because they can't get through. I think if they had a passageway, vandalism, is that the vandalism you were speaking of that we've
No.
heard in our staff? What else is
That's
happening?
vandalism of the fence that took place that specifically people disagreed with the fence being created by the school. And
What other vandalism are you seeing because of this?
I'm saying
Right.
there's been vandalism of mailboxes, vandalism of lawns, people trenching lawns, coming and going from the community. There's been trespassing of people's property both at West Neck, as well as through Victoria Park. People see the open space that you see there as it's something I can use for my own. They think it's public property. We don't have signs posted, which addressed some of the parking issues, I think, earlier.
Are you having parking issues right now on your,
Not during the summer that I've seen.
and how long has the school been open now? I can't,
A year
and a half.
year and, so it seems like your issues would be for sporting events, or I guess maybe even students that didn't want to drive around and park in the student lot would just park here. So, but you're not seeing any of those issues now at
We
all?
have seen those issues. When school's in session, yes, we have seen those issues.
You are. You're having students and people attending these events parking on the,
Yes, sir. And we've talked with the principal to try to address it, find the students who don't have a sticker on the back of their car.
my last point, I'm wondering, I'm sure you have homeowners in your community there that have students that go to the high school.
We do have a few. I heard this morning the number was 50. I don't believe that's, I don't know where that number comes from. I know we have numerous students that attend some of the academies, and we have students that go to private school as well. I don't know how many attend the high school. I haven't done that math.
Yeah,
I'm sure the
it'd
school
just
has
be
that
interesting to
down.
hear their point of view on this path, walkway to get to the school instead of having their, I mean, I know if I lived in there and I had a son or daughter that was going to that school, I'd much rather be able to walk that path than go down North
And-
Landing.
And to be clear, maybe I was too verbose. We're not looking to, and our applicant stated, if the residents wanted to establish access to high school, we would, that's back when we made the application, there was a fence there. We would work with the school to come up with an acceptable solution for both the community and the school.
So if you close this right away and you put a fence there, no gate,
I don't think that that's what this,
what would you do? What are you going to do to stop people from using that? What would be the answer?
we'd probably post it as no trespassing private property.
But you know they're still going to use it. That's not going to stop somebody that wants to go
No.
through or go to school. I think,
That provides you the opportunity to enforce.
okay, fair enough.
And I would hope that parents of those children would say, after at least one phone call or some communication,
Yeah,
would say, hey, look, that doesn't make sense.
okay. Fair
My
enough.
concern, if it's North Landing, and I talked about the safety issue, so now we're going to encourage students to walk, ride bicycles on North Landing, because now you have a cut-through to get through Victoria Park. I think you're going to see an increase in that. I think Courthouse Estates, and I think the North Landing residents are going to be driving on there. I've talked with the city planners about, is there a possibility for a sidewalk on North Landing? And I was told people's private property already encroaches on the road, or the road already encroaches on people's private property. So that's not going to happen. It's not cost-effective, eminent domain, and all the other issues would not, the city's not looking to pursue that, and the planning board isn't looking to pursue that. I think another of the concerns is the traffic that comes down North Landing, heading northeast, up towards West Neck, and then making a right, it backs up, and the students get late for school. So if you're going to get late, and you've already been late before, and you don't want weekend detention, zip into Victoria Park, leave your car on the street, and get to school.
Have you spoken with the three homeowners that kind of surround the piece of property there to see what their take is on this?
3 homeowners.
Well, you got one on each side, and then you have one essentially across the street. So the 3 houses that would be closest to this.
The one across
Yeah.
the street just changed hands. I mean,
Okay.
it just sold within the last month. The one to the, above Guernsey Way there, he was our representative to the vignettes,
Okay.
who came back disappointed, reported that promises he thought he had from the school board and the development didn't come to pass. You heard this morning that there's a buffer area of approximately 100 feet. You can see kind of that gray dirt area in between the neighborhood and the school fields. That's about 5 feet tall right now. After 3-4 years of growth, we were told it couldn't be a buffer area of a hill or anything else. That never came to pass. It was never promised, but we were told it wasn't possible. As most of our community is buffered with hills and whatnot, I don't understand why that wasn't a possibility, but I'm not here to dispute that. We're just talking about the closure of the street.
Any other questions? Jan?
What I want to know is what makes you all think or feel sure that the vandalism that's happening within the community is a result of the road?
I can't draw a direct correlation between one or the other until the vandals are caught and identified. I don't know what that correlation is.
Okay.
Increased traffic and turning the community into a thoroughfare has got to increase at least the opportunities for vandalism.
Well, since it's always been there, I mean, I don't know that there is any increase of traffic.
What's always been there?
Well, Kearnsey Way has always been there.
Right, but there was a fence.
Okay, but if they're breaking through the fence to get through there, they've obviously been coming back through there anyway. I was just wondering how, I mean, I can understand how it looks, the fence, vandalism to the fence definitely looks like people needing access, but I was just wondering why you were relating the other vandalism that's happened in the neighborhood to the fact that the road is there.
Correlation was just volume of traffic.
Okay.
And the school wasn't open until a year and a half ago, so. Before the school even owned the property, when it was still owned by the people developing as Manchester Station, there used to be trespassing, and police were called on numerous occasions for guns being shot on their open land, people trespassing, riding dirt bikes and getting hurt. They had some liability concerns. So there became I don't know, it was urban legend that, hey, you can get over here and there's some big hills of sand that you can, hard to find hills in Virginia Beach. You can sled on, you can ride dirt bikes on, and water you can go skinny dipping in, and a place where you can shoot your guns if you want to.
Dr. Quasner.
None of those activities we'd like to have in Victoria Park.
So Victoria Park's not a gated community, though. The sidewalks are public.
That's correct.
Anyone can
The
come in.
streets
If
and
there were
sidewalks are public.
sidewalks on North Landing, someone could come in and walk through the development, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you are confirming that the vandalism isn't necessarily correlated with the access point? You may have had
I can't
vandalism in your
confirm or
neighborhood,
deny
but you
that.
can't
Right.
confirm it's as a result of
I
that,
can't-
right?
I
So
can't
one
point
isn't
to it and say
necessarily A to B, correct?
No, that's.
Okay. So you have some trouble with parking when school's in session and perhaps when there are sporting events, correct? Problems with parking on your street. And the other issue that you're talking about is in relation to the homeowners association, and I believe from 2011 to 2015, there's been some turnover in your development, and you haven't taken another formal vote to determine how the homeowners feel. Because in hearing from a few of them, I understand this is a fairly contentious issue in your development. It's not a completely agreed upon thing at the moment, a majority rule that needs to be closed in this fashion.
Well, again, the street closure, and I don't think there'd be any disagreement, and there has been no formal petition, so to speak, or written down formal discussion. There has been discussion at a homeowners association meeting, and people expressed an interest of pursuing public access or limited access to the high school from the community.
But people also expressed a desire to have it open as well.
Limited access, open to Victoria Park residents. They almost
You
unanimously
mean
agreed,
like a card or something like that?
potentially a gate or a swipe card of some sort, yes.
Okay, all right.
Similar to what exists at Salt Meadow Bay Apartments right now. They have a key punch code on a gate. Now, we recognize that would be a cost on the community. We wouldn't expect the city to absorb that cost. The fact that there was a fence there before, okay, that was getting vandalized, we'd have to do something about that.
Mr. Russo.
Okay, I'm having trouble understanding this. So are you saying that the cars are parking, students are parking, I guess, on Bombay Lane?
Bombay Landing, correct.
And then walking?
And on that other street coming in there, that's Copperhawk.
Okay, go back to the other picture. No, go back to the okay, so they're parking there and then walking to the high school, is that?
Correct.
I mean, do you have any idea the number of cars a day, or?
I don't have.
I mean.
Like I say, we've discussed this with the principal to try to address that and reduce the vandalism of the fence. And I'm not saying that some of the vandalism wasn't caused by Victoria Park homeowners.
Well,
That
I guess I'm just having some concern. Could you go back to the other picture? Now, go back to the aerial. The aerial.
He's trying.
Okay.
Other direction. Hey.
I guess, because I have 3 kids, 2 of whom are no longer teenagers, and they are going to park as close as they can to wherever they have to be. So it doesn't make sense that they would park on Bombay Landing to get out and walk. I mean, love my kids, but they wouldn't walk any farther than they have to. So are you sure that
Yes,
these cars are?
yes. Principal Beal addressed the issue with a few students. I'd have to ask him how many students he had to have a
I
discussion.
mean, is there not enough park? There should be enough parking.
No, and that's-
Kellum.
Sure, the 800. I don't think it's a amount of street parking available, or parking lot parking available, the 800 spots that were designed in with the school. I think it's a matter of, I don't want to wait at the line, I don't want to have to deal with the police officer that's controlling the entrance and exit from the high school. I'm assuming there's still a resource officer that's out there directing traffic, stopping traffic, letting buses go, et cetera. If I'm late, or I just don't want to deal with that, or I've had my sticker scraped, here's my alternative. And that's when I'm done with my soccer practice, football practice, lacrosse, baseball, whatever, I can go from the field right to my car and head on home. The old Kellum had similar problems with the parking in the courthouse community parking spaces over there and along Princess Anne Road. Why would kids park there when they had the ability to park right next to the high school? Okay. Because it allowed them to get out in the middle of the school day without having to confront any personnel.
How many cars are we talking about on a typical school day?
I don't have the data to support that.
Okay.
2, 3, 4. It's not turned into a parking lot yet. The concern is, now that we have a gate, the concern is, okay, so it wasn't, it was a little bit of a parking lot when you had to break through the fence or crawl through the hole that was created after the vandalism. It's going to only increase.
So maybe we should take the gate away and just leave the hole in the fence.
If you have a fence, if you're going to have a fence, why don't you maintain the fence?
Understand.
I mean, if there's an intent for that, obviously that's a,
Dr. Quasny.
I think Jan had her hand up first.
Jan.
Oh, sorry.
I guess I'm trying to, with just some of the things that are being said, is why do you think that closing the street will change any of those issues?
it will provide Victoria Park Homeowners Association the ability to police it themselves.
So you guys are in a position to hire somebody to be out there to watch that?
If it came to that, and that's what the homeowners association desired to do, then yes. Or electronic gate, I think is probably a more cost-effective way that we would pursue that.
Well, the thing about the electronic gate and the keypad is, you know, Bob tells Mary and Mary tells Sally and Sally tells, you know, and
Understood.
before you know it,
And we've had all those
everybody,
discussions, almost sounds like we've
everybody
been at our,
knows the code.
homeowner association meeting. We've had those, and we've talked about swipe cards.
Right.
We've talked about video monitoring. There's a whole bunch of technological solutions that are possible. I'm not saying which would be pursued and which wouldn't.
Right.
But the intent is not to prevent Victoria Park residents from getting to the high school and it being a walking neighborhood. That is not the intent of the homeowner association at this point.
Right, because I don't see that any of those things will change with closing the street.
What won't change?
The access, the people trying to, you know, vandalize the fence or the gate. I mean, you put up a swipe gate or a keypad gate, you know, there's still, I don't see that it's going to change.
As the chairman said earlier, once you tow the first, I don't believe it was yourself, once you tow the first car who's parked illegally against, in the Eurotech situation, who's parked illegally in front of your building, the word will get out and the developer will, across the street, Eurotech doesn't want his customers getting their cars towed and causing problems for his business.
Not if it's teenagers that are causing the problem, because they think that it can't happen to me. They have that mindset. Believe me, I have a couple of those.
I have a couple as well.
So,
I only have one now.
They believe that, you know, I won't get caught, those things won't happen to me, the majority of them. So, that's the only concern that I have, that I see that leaving it without closing it allows it for public access and use. Closing it only allows for your community use. but I don't see that it's going to change the outcome of what's happening.
Dr. Kwasny.
I wonder, is it just as likely that the parked cars on the street might be students from your own development? Because I know my boys, when they were teenagers, would drive their car from point A to point B to reduce
100
their
feet,
walking time.
quarter mile, or
Right, so it's possible that the parking are teenagers from
Certainly
your
possible.
own, sure.
I'm not a parking
And
lot
it's
expert.
possible the vandalism has nothing to do with the fence, right? So for me, those two reasons for closing this pathway in this fashion are off the table. And then I have to say, wow, what a lovely amenity you have. A terrific walkway right onto high school property where there is a cross-country course, tennis courts. You can get down to the city area. You can get from there down to Lansdowne Commons. You could go to the library. I mean, super amenity for everyone. I live in a development where people travel through on bikes, walking, horses, all the time. And we don't have vandalism problems or parking problems. We may not be right next to a high school, but we love the fact that people can come in and out of our community and enjoy that connectivity. I think that's a benefit to your community.
And the people from outside come in and park in your community
Sure
in order
they
to
do.
access
Mhm.
those things. That doesn't cause any
No
issues
angst.
for the community.
No angst.
I got a question.
Mr. Thornton.
Assuming that fence, well, first question, who put the initial fence up? Was that your neighborhood? School put it up?
Correct.
Okay, then people from one side or the other broke a hole in it so they could get through it.
Initially, they broke the fence.
I see, so the school initially didn't put in a gate. They have since put in a gate.
That happened within the last 2 weeks.
Okay, so let's assume that that stays there, and according to Mr. Arnold this morning in our work session, they're going to have times a day when it's locked and times a day when it's open. Have you all met, has the neighborhood talked to the police department? Because it seems to me that if a whole lot of kids over there figure out they can park there and walk and the gate's open from 7 till whenever, is there the solution may be having the police department ticket cars or keep these kids out of there, because nobody wants, 25 or 30 Mustangs or Camaros over there day in and day out with whatever. That's more likely the solution than closing the gate, because if you close the gate and they can break another hole in the gate's not, as long as it's not a brick wall, they're going to penetrate that gate. Somehow they're already doing it. And so I think I commend the city for at least putting a gate in there. They stopped tearing the fence up. The problem is policing the automobiles and who's encroaching on your neighborhood. And I guess my question in a rambling way is, have you all met with the police department or talked to an authority to say you put up no parking signs? You've got, what's across the street? Looks like there's a large tract of land. If you walk off this trail and walk into something, are
To the
those
right or to the left, sir?
to the left? Are they unsold lots, or is that a
No,
large?
that's our open space.
That's your open space?
Correct.
So it's a good thing you got a sidewalk there. I guess the kids would be parking all over your open space. But anyway, maybe that's the solution, is to post no parking along that radius and have the police work with you.
Who are you
We've-
suggesting would post no parking?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you
you
have,
don't know.
my question is, has the neighborhood met with the police department and said, we've got a problem? All of a sudden, we're overrun with high school kids parking their cars in our neighborhood. I think that's a better solution than closing the gate or locking the gate or not having a gate.
Hey, Bob, our staff might be able to comment on how that's feasible or not.
Yeah.
I don't,
It is feasible from what, well, okay, get the staff to comment on it. We had that discussion.
Oh, you do, okay.
It's actually through traffic engineering, and Steve Fruman told me at the break that they have received a request from one resident to post some no parking signs, but it would take 85% of the community to post those type of signs.
Well, you've got,
That's a little different than what, and I'm not sure if we spoke with the same person, so I'm not disputing that information. We've communicated, both Mr. Holt and Mr. Arnold put us in contact with the Traffic Management Office. The president of the homeowner association communicated with him saying, can we get this process started for the no parking signs before the gate gets completed? That hasn't happened. Obviously, the gate went in. We were told, wait till there's a problem. Once there's been a problem for a while, then we'll see about no parking signs. We asked for the petition to get it in advance. We were told we'd have it within 2 weeks. It's been 4 weeks now since that, well, I believe it's been 4 weeks since that initial communication took place. And the homeowner association has not been provided that petition for the no parking signs. Again, but no parking, the problem with that is now you've created a problem for the entire community. People, especially those 3 homes that live close there, they want to have no parking out in front of their homes.
Well, you
when they have-
can work that to no parking from, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. You can work that so that you could figure out who's parking there. It's a little technical, but I understand if you live in the neighborhood, you don't want to not be able to use your own streets. And maybe you just post it around that radius or something. I'm just saying, I don't think the gate's going to get sealed back up. I don't think your fence is going to get put back. And I don't think there's any desire on the staff's part or our part to seal that school off from your neighborhood. I'm trying to reach out and find a solution to your problem, which seems to be high school kids encroaching on your neighborhood, parking so they can take, and these are the kids that may not be able to get a parking pass. I had a daughter like that at First Colonial. She figured out where to park her car until she got a parking pass. That's the way they all work it. So I'm just trying to be creative with a solution. Because
No parking signs create the same enforcement problem.
I don't think putting a fence back, locking that gate is going to be the answer, because it's just going to get torn apart or vandalized or pulled down or whatever. And anyway, I'll let other people ask questions.
Anyone else? Any more? Thank you.
Thank you.
Call our next speaker, please.
That's it. There are no other speakers.
All right, I guess we'll close the public hearing and open up for discussion amongst the commissioners. Anyone like to start?
I think I've, in asking my questions, sort of voiced some of my concerns. I see that leaving the street as it is provides public access and public right-of-way for, people to get to the school or to, places beyond. Closing it only allows then access for that particular community. I don't think that the problems that they're experiencing are going to go away by closing the street. And there's a possibility that, it could continue. I think there needs to be another way or another avenue to try to address some of their concerns. I'm not sure that I see how the vandalism within the community itself, especially when he indicated that one of them was at the entrance, is a direct correlation with the street closure.
Anybody else? Dr. Quasny.
I think this is a terrific amenity for the whole community, not just Victoria Park. And as I said earlier, because I can't make a correlation between the vandalism and the fence, or the parking and the fence, those two things aren't part of what I consider when I take a look at this. And what I consider when I take a look at this is the benefit to the community. I think it serves our comprehensive plan, our bikeways and trails plan, our 2040 Envision Virginia Beach. I think that it undergirds all of that and is illustrative of the type of connectivity we'd like to see throughout Virginia Beach. For that reason, I would not be able to support a closure of that street.
Mr. Ripley.
Normally in these street closures, the viewers don't have an interest. They're telling us that the public doesn't have an interest in the right-of-way. But in this case, they're saying they do have an interest. When the public has an interest in something, then it's a high bar to reach in order to turn that over, in my mind. I think, it's about the same use. I think we have an access use for the public, and then the neighborhood would like to control the access use. And since the public viewers have recommended what they have, I can't get by that either, so I can't support it.
Anybody else? Anyone like to make a motion?
I would.
Motion made by Dr. Quasny.
I'd like to make a motion to support the staff in denying this application for a street closure at Guernsey Way.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Rosinski. Mr. Whedon, we're ready to vote.
You denying the closure, right?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Jan, yes.
Are we A or nay? Are we?
We're voting to deny. The motion was to deny.
An
Yes,
A-
you want to- yes, you deny.
Yes, you want to vote positive.
Yes, deny.
Yes. These are always tricky.
Vote is open.
It was a little confusing.
By a vote of 11-0, the commission has approved the denial of the street closure for Guernsey Way and Victoria Park Homeowners Association.
Thank you.
You want to vote against your-
Please call the next agenda item.
Mr. Chairman, our next agenda item is an application of Fun Spot Amusements LLC for conditional use permit outdoor recreation on property located at 304, 306, and 308 22nd Street, District 6, Beach. Mr. Garrington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. Again, for the record, I'm Billy Garrington here on behalf of the applicants Fun Spot Amusements LLC, property as you see on the screen at 22nd Street. I sure hope my case don't take as long as that one. But just to tell you how times have changed, I went to the old Kellam High School. They had to put a fence up to keep us in the school property. We still found a way to skip. So our two favorite classes were homeroom and lunch break, okay? So that's how times have changed. Mr. Chairman, you will remember this plan was in front of you a couple months ago. It's been deferred twice. The first deferral was because we did not properly display the public notice signs on the property, and I apologize for that. The second deferral was when we decided, just before it came to the Planning Commission in June, that we needed to make some changes to this property if we had any kind of chance at all to get a positive recommendation. Because originally, these two rides that you see were put right over here on the west side of this property in close proximity to the new residential property that has been built on 22nd Street. I knew that was a bad plan, and it should have never been put there in the first place. So we went back and revised it, took the two rides and moved them as far east as we can over to abut this commercial property that you have on the side of the property over here. We also revised the hours of operation on the property, made some revisions as to how the equipment would be stored at nighttime when it was no longer in use. And we met with Mrs. Gay, and we thank her very much for accommodating us to meet with us to come up with those changes. Gave her the information on the blowers that keep these things inflated during the daytime, how they would be buffered and how they would be insulated, the days of operation, the months of operation, and all that, to try to come up with a new, something that was more agreeable to the city staff. But keep in mind, this original plan, even when it went to the RAC committee, was endorsed unanimously by RAC, even with the rides over here as where they are, where they were before. So we think what we've got now, short-term, and we know this is just a short-term application. We think by moving them over here to the east on this piece of property will be much more agreeable to these houses that you have over here. And closing this down at sundown every day is going to be much better than something that's going to be going till 10, 11 o'clock at night on that property, which is what you would have before, because we didn't limit the hours of operation. So I don't know if any of you have seen these 17 conditions that Mrs. Gay gave me between the informal session and now.
No.
You haven't seen them?
Did you have those that you can pass out to everybody, please?
As she's passing around, I'd like to tell you that we are in total agreement with all those 17 conditions. And as a matter of fact, I would even make an 18th condition if she would oblige us to do so. Once you've got a copy of them to take a look at, I will let you know. And what you have out there now is a unsightly gravel parking lot that's there on 22nd Street, and you're in an area that is constantly being over bombarded with tourists that are looking for a free place to park or some place to park when they're going to special events, and it's almost impossible to keep people from parking on that property. I know that the staff seems to think that he's continuing to run a commercial operation there. I don't think that's quite the case, but I think when you go by there and see that cars are parked on it for any reason at all, it would be easy to come to that assumption. He did allow the contractor that did all of the improvements to Pacific Avenue for the city of Virginia Beach to use this as a staging area. So that's one of the good things that he tried to do on this piece of property. If you wouldn't mind, the 18th condition that I would tell you that we would add to the conditions that Mrs. Gay has given you is that if this request is approved by city council, the owner shall diligently, and I do mean diligently, apply for a site plan approval through the Development Services Center and shall start construction as soon as possible. Because the sooner you get that developed parking lot out there with the landscaping, the asphalt, the blacktop, the curb and gutter, you're going to have a much better situation on 22nd Street than that which you have now, which is a gravel lot. There's nothing in the world but a catch basin and a garbage can for every piece of trash and debris that blows across the property. As we all know, that this area is in close proximity to the Dome property. Everybody who owns property in the area is waiting by saying, what's going to happen with the Dome? What's going to happen with the Dome? Putting a 3-year time limit on this, I think, gives us a chance to go back and revisit it after 3 years. And if it's not a good use for the property then so be it. But I do think that it is in that transition area that everybody is contemplating what's going to happen to the Dome property. And once you know exactly how that's going to be developed, I think you're going to see everything in this area go through a redevelopment.
Any questions for Mr. Garrington?
What we were given has 18 conditions.
Mine's got 17.
Well, she needs to give you one that she gave us.
What's the 18th?
The 18th on ours, well, let me back up. On
Okay.
1 through 5, as I understand it, are new conditions that have to do with this use in addition to what was approved in December of 2014. You had indicated a minute ago that this would go from 10 until sundown.
Correct.
Well, this says 7 p.m. Well, sundown is around 8:30, 8:45, so we need to either have a date certain, a time certain that you think about that and tell us what that needs to be. And then on the back part of it, she's put in a condition that it would be for 2 years with an annual review by the zoning administrator. You had just mentioned 3 years.
The first set of conditions I got, Mr. Thornton, said 3 years. If you want to do it at 2 years, we're fine with that. One of the other extra conditions she put on here was about the public restrooms, and we know that we have to have restrooms there. But since he owns an operation that's in less than 500 feet away from that, he is allowed to use those restrooms. So the one that you have now has 18 conditions, and the one condition we added about going forth immediately would then be the 19th condition if you were so inclined to approve.
Is that a new condition, or is that something you should have done anyway under the one that was
Something that
approved?
we should have done anyway, but by making it a condition of the use permit, at least it gives the city some enforcement action, because once we get approval, we have to work diligently on it, and we can't drag our feet. And once the site plan's approved, we need to go to work.
Tell me,
They've already submitted for site plan review for the commercial parking lot, so that condition's really not necessary.
Would the use of this property for this fun spot not happen until that site plan work was done?
It can't happen until the site plan is approved.
So that could take you might miss this summer.
It's possible we
I mean,
will.
you got to get the site plan approved, then you got to do the work.
That's correct.
And then next thing you know, you're in about the first week of October.
But the one site plan is already in for submission.
Okay.
So at least that ball has started.
So you wouldn't start this exercise, this operation, until the site plan was approved and the work
improvements were installed?
and the work done?
That's correct.
And then you'd put a 1 or 2 year limit on it?
That's correct.
Okay. That's my question.
Any other questions? Mr. Russo? Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Mr. Garrington, condition number 5 talks about blowers being insulated. Do you have any indication of the decibels or any other?
According to the information we got from the manufacturer, once you insulate them, it's down to a decibel level of about 40 decibels, which is about that of a heat pump that you see on your next door neighbor's house.
Mr. Weiner?
I'd ask a question. Last year, when we came in front of us and we approved this, and we wanted a 5-year, if I'm not mistaken, we said, no, we're going to do this for 2 years. Why didn't you submit the site plan for the parking lot then?
He did. That
He
site
did?
plan has been submitted. In the meantime, he comes up with another grandiose idea, because he originally had the fun slide that was down on the beach, and the city did not renew that agreement with him. So now he's looking for somewhere else to do part of his entertainment projects that he's doing So he picks this site, but it's easy to come up with ideas, but it's a lot, you can come up with them a lot quicker than I can get them approved by the city, I can
Do it.
tell you that.
Was that plan approved?
Which plan was
The,
that?
the first site plan for the 2-year deal for the parking lot?
Well, it's in the Development Services Center now for approval, and it would be approved, but.
No, the first one.
Right,
The very-
correct, yeah.
For the 2-year parking, nothing but
But
a parking lot.
it hasn't gone through the final review yet, because in the meantime, we knew that we were going to change the use of the property, so we suspended that until we submit this, and then now this site plan will supersede that one.
It hasn't gone through one review for site plan review. It was submitted about a month ago.
For the park, just for the parking lot.
For any development to that site, anything, but it's for the parking
Just a
lot.
month ago was the first time you submitted anything.
That's correct.
The summer coming up to start parking on there and all that.
But
Okay.
he realizes he can't do this, this cannot take place until the improvements are installed.
Okay.
Mr. Brockwell.
You might have answered this already with the dome comment, but what, other than this, what were his short-term plans? No idea? Just waiting and seeing?
I don't want to tell you some of the ideas that we've come up with on that property. I think one of the suggestions you made was a food truck?
We would take that, we'd rather that over inflatables, but that's not ideal for that site.
I just think it's too valuable a piece of property, too small to limit just this piece of property to residential. If he acquires some more parcels around it, I think it may lend itself to residential down the road, or if the dome site gets developed, I think you'll see some mixed business use in there. But again, I think everything is being looked at as what is going to happen at 19th and Pacific Avenue, and more importantly, when is it going to happen? Because you keep hearing something's going to happen, but it never takes place. So the fact that we're on a 2-year time limit on this, I think it just gives us every chance to come back and revisit it after that and see if it's still a good use of the property.
And what do you think the draw would be? You think people will drive there, park there, and use it, or do you?
I think they will. I think you'll get a lot of foot traffic there, too. People there's a putt-putt across the street. There's the bumper boats that is right across the street on 19th Street. I mean, there's people walking up and down the streets in the resort area constantly, so I think you'll get a lot of foot traffic to it, and not just people that are driving by cars, especially since you got to be going west on 22nd Street to get in and west on 22nd Street to get out.
And can you go into the restroom situation? To be honest, I hadn't thought about that, but you bring it up, and now I'm wondering how would that work?
The building code says as long as you have facilities within 500 feet of where you're doing this at, you're okay. Well, he owns the bumper boat place, which is right across Pacific Avenue, and he has restrooms there. So since it's the same owner, he is allowed to use that as his restroom facilities and not have to build restrooms on this parcel of property.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers?
No, there are no other speakers.
We will close the public hearing and open it up for discussion.
I would start out by saying, I think the owner of this property, has been a little bit lax. Maybe I'm being too kind, but to get this stuff done, it was disapproved in December of last year, and they're still messing around with getting a site plan done. So anything that we think we would agree to today, I think it's absolutely critical that nothing be allowed to go on there until they get the site plan approved and all the improvements made according to what they agreed to back in December. So I'm inclined to want to go along and help them do something with this property on a short-term basis. The other thing I would do is in condition 2, I would just make it, instead of, 7 o'clock, maybe leave it 7 o'clock or leave it at sundown. It's hard to, sundown between now and December changes radically, so we can debate when it ought to close. And then the last item, I would think that 1 year would be about all I would feel comfortable with, and then let the staff, advise us back if it's a reasonable operation, and let them do it on a year-to-year basis. Because sooner or later, this is not what this is going to be. I mean, it might even be a flop, it might be a success, but to let tourists walk down there from Pacific and have kids play on slides and stuff on a short-term basis doesn't really bother me. I just would like to see this applicant do what he's supposed to do, and not drag this on any longer. Maybe this is a way to get this site plan and the site work pushed forward on a more timely basis. Those are my thoughts.
Anyone else? Ms. Oliver?
Yeah, I agree with Bob. I think that the piece of property needs to go ahead and be developed and finished off, and in order to get that done. And I hate to just sit there like it's doing and be a cut-through to Subway. I think that 7, I'd like to see it shut down at 7, just because of the sunset thing, and that there are residents close by, at least they can count on it breaking down at the same time. But I think it's a good short-term use of it.
Anyone else? Mr. Brockwell?
I'm kind of on the fence. I mean, there's, aside from all the procedural history, I mean, I'm trying to think about the gateway aspect of it too, and, you know, I'm trying to compartmentalize the things I'm weighing. But that is one of them, but then I think it's golf putt-putts right across the street, and, you know, it's a half block from Pacific. It's not too terribly out of place. I mean, I think I share the vague uncertainty that you all share, but like I said, I'm on the fence. On one hand, I tend to just say, staff has done a lot of research on this, let's go with the staff recommendation, but you talk about one-year time limits, and this might get the thing moving forward, and this might allow for some enforcement possibilities. It's still a little bit vague, and I'm wavering, but I'm a little more comfortable with this idea now that we've had this discussion. Maybe a one-year use would work, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, the fact that there's 100 different ideas coming forth all the time on this property on one hand is frightening. On the other hand, maybe that's good.
The marketplace.
Yeah, let them try something and see what happens. So I know that's not the most definitive statement I've ever made, but I think I might be okay with us doing it for a year and seeing how it goes with some pretty strict.
Before we continue real quick, would the applicant even be willing to a 1 year?
We're going to be willing to go with whatever this board,
Okay. Take that as a nodded yes.
whatever your approval is.
Jan?
Well, I have a little problem with just the 1 year, because if they're just now getting into site plan review, by the time they're able to do anything and get it going, you know, they may not be able to really get those inflatables going, and then have just, 1 month or 2 months of next summer to be able to do it. So if it have to end in July, so I would be inclined to, you know, I mean, carry it through if we're going to do it, to carry it through summer of 2016, so that they're not, all of a sudden they've expired and right in the middle of a season.
So
the
possibly
only
put a
thing.
condition on where it would go through, say, December of 2016, so it gave the full next calendar year?
Right. Or even through the, you know, into.
They're in item number 2, they're asking to operate it from March to December. Mr. Garrington, is it likely that this is going to be open in September, October, November, December, or did you all just put that down to put it?
It's just the months of operation. He's never opened November and December, so he knows, I mean, December and
I
January.
mean, do kids play on these slides in November and December?
That's right, but not January and February, so that's the reason why we put those months of operation in there.
Thank you.
Mr. Weiner?
I don't know, I'm kind of like Mr. Brockwell over here. I'm kind of on the fence on this one, but I would personally say that I don't think anything should be done on the site till site plan review is done, and he starts the process of going through and making sure that the site gets done right. It's been a long time since that happened, and it hasn't done anything with it. And I think this is not the first time this has happened on this site. So I think we ought to hold him accountable for that to get it started, and then maybe come back to us. Because you can't do anything till the site plan review happens and he starts the process. But, I mean, that's my opinion. I'll leave it like that and let y'all.
Yeah, I would add a condition that said something like the operation cannot commence until the site plan is approved and all improvements are completed.
Fine.
Because that's not clear in here. I mean, he said, he testified that they shall diligently apply for a site plan. I would go so far as to say until the site plan is stamped. And in my experience, that probably is not going to leave a whole lot of time this summer left to open this up. because if you just have had one pass at it, it takes 2 or 3 passes, and then it's another 2 or 3 months to get the work done, so.
But if you want to say until all the improvements are installed as per the approved site plan, the business, the operation cannot open, that we would be inclined to that.
Okay.
Can you put that plan up that we're talking about, just for clarity? This is the one with landscaping and everything.
Right there, that's it, right there.
That's on page
Right there.
Is that what we're talking
10.
about, has to be in place before anything happens?
Yes, so this site plan is included under condition, or the landscaping, under a few conditions. Let's see, number 6, 7, 8, 9, partially condition 10, you could say. So yes, it'd be substantially similar to this. And the additional conditions.
Dr. Quasny.
I wanted to say to Ross, so how do you feel about that, Ross?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was sharing your trepidation and just automatically saying, okay, yes, because it kind of feels like it's, well, if you give us this, we'll do what we were supposed to do all along, and that's a little bothersome to me because it should have been done well before this came forward, and I'm not really excited about these temporary blow-up structures at the gateway there. But I do feel Mr. Thornton's caveat that it be a limited use of a year, perhaps as Jan has said, starting at going through a summer season, but not to occur until the site plan has been approved and completed. I think that's essential now, since it is a kind of, we'll do it if you let us have it, so do it, would be the thing that pushes me over the edge to say, okay, I can come off the fence on your side. But I think that's a problem, that's been a problem for me. Also, the idea that the kids are going to run across the street to the bathroom. Right? That's what they're going to be doing? Running across Pacific Avenue?
There's a pedestrian crossing there.
Okay.
They just
Good.
pushed the little button.
Okay.
Anyone else? Does anyone want to make a motion?
Well, you haven't given us your thoughts.
Mr. Chairman, can I mention one thing, just for clarity? You need to state if you're going to have a specific time limit when this use permit expires, whether it can be renewed administratively or if it has to go back to council, which would entail another hearing with the planning commission, but that's important that you specify that.
Okay.
You want me to move it? Or you can do it?
Well, yeah.
you.
I'm just like everybody else. I mean, this is not ideal there by any means. And when Bob and I were talking a few minutes ago, before I came in here, it wasn't looking good to me for this. But the time limit that Bob has suggested, and if it will finally get this site improved, which, again, it probably should have been already, you know, I would be willing to support this at a limited time limit. Could that time limit, based on what you said, Mr. McCauley, could the time limit be stated, or the condition be stated such that a 1-year date from the time of site, after this, once site plan is approved and the work is completed, the 1-year date would start at that point?
If planning knows when the work is actually completed, I would think that there'd have to be inspection in that regard.
It'd be a CO issue before we can open.
Yeah, I think the certificate of occupancy is something that the zoning administrator would issue when all the work's done and all the site plan requirements have been met. So why don't you just start it from when the certificate of occupancy has been issued?
We actually gave that a bit of thought, and we left it as it was previously approved by City Council, being from site plan, because we don't want him to sit on this for 6 years and watch development in the area, go on, and then he comes back and, now wants to start on this 1-year conditional use permit. We'd rather we're recommending that it be 2 years after City Council. So if he stays on his schedule that he did previously, it would really be a 1-year conditional use permit after improvements.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I'm not, 2 years after City Council? After the prior council approval?
After this one.
Oh, okay, if city council approves it, it would be for 2 years. Well, sure, that's the way it typically would be, but then it's to be renewed administratively, or does council have to approve it? That's another.
He's holding himself.
Can I ask a
Mr. Winger.
question on that? If it's approved administratively and the administration says no, will he have to file a new
If you want,
application
yeah.
to come back in front of us?
Yes, yes, the administrative approval is something that is done after, the planning director gives that, and the code specifies what standards he uses, the typical standards. If that is not given, then the matter would have to go to city council for the operation to continue.
What about this? If it gets developed with the landscaping and everything, and it goes to have the rides on it, and then after the summer he decides, that's not going to work, I'm going to go back to a parking lot, can he do that?
Well, no, if it's a conditional use permit, he'd need another conditional use
Okay,
permit for
that's
a
what I- make sure.
commercial parking lot.
Yep, just to make sure,
Yeah, Bill, we can take care of it, thanks.
to make sure.
Anyone else? Dr. Quasin.
So, Christine, how were you explaining that time frame again?
Just 2 years from when
Just
council
2 years from when
approvals.
council approves it this time?
Yes.
Okay, and then can we request that it has to come through the process again, or does it automatically get an administrative?
No, no, only if the city council specifies that administrative approval is something that can be given, not necessarily that it will be given, but it can be given. Does that apply?
That's what I was
So-
saying, can we recommend that it be something that has to come back through at 2 years?
Yeah, you can make a
whole
choice of
process,
whether or not
okay.
the administrative approval
Mhm.
would be potentially applicable, or whether the city council would have to be
Okay.
just the same old process.
I think I would feel more comfortable with that, because I'm not sure that I would want to see it just slide through without being looked at again in terms of whether or not it's appropriate use at that point.
I think there are two issues here. One, we want the site improved pursuant to the last plan he got approved by the council, the curb, the gutter, the site plan. And whether he elects to put these inflatable rides on there or not, he might decide at the end of the summer not to even do that. That we know is another idea. But are we, by nailing this thing down to having the site plan approved and having the improvements in place before this operation opens, that's the most that we can do to force him to get this site plan done and get the work done? I mean, he can decide not to do the work and come back and let this thing run out, is that right? So, okay, well, all we can do is hold his feet to the fire on this use. And hopefully Mr. Garrington can go back and explain to him, you got to get the site plan approved, and you've got to get the work done, you've got to get the parking lot fixed,
Correct.
or else they're not going to want to see you in here anymore. Because that's part of our dilemma. You know, he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing, and it's hard for us to sit down here and approve, another idea, another concept.
I concur, Mr. Thornton.
So, there we have it.
Anyone else? Anyone like to make a motion?
I'll attempt to, if you
Good.
want me to. I would move that we approve this with the conditions that were passed out by Christine dated 7/8/2015. They're called drafted conditions. The hours of operation are from 10 to 7 from March through December. So we'll leave that as it is. No reference to sundown. And then on item number 18, it would be for a maximum of 1 year from, well, it says 2 years, but we'll leave it for 2 years with city council approval. And then 19 would be that the operation would not commence until the site plan is approved and all improvements completed. And I'd welcome anybody that would want to amend that.
Just one thing, you do need to specify whether after the 2-year period expires, whether it can be administratively approved.
Okay, well, the way it's
or
worded,
otherwise.
Bill, it says with an annual review by zoning administrator or her designee to ensure compliance with the conditions. So that would stay in.
Well, yeah, but that's a little bit too loose for me. I
Okay.
think that administrative approval pursuant to the, I give you the city code section just to make sure everybody knows it is section 221K. And just say that it is subject to administrative approvals, under section 221K of the city zoning ordinance.
That would be with an annual review, subject to administrative review.
Well, just forget about annual review, it
Okay.
just says it may be renewed administratively in accordance with the provisions of city zoning ordinance, section 221K.
Okay.
And that makes it clear beyond any kind of argument.
You got that, Ed? Or do I need to say it?
I'll try.
Okay.
We're okay with that, right? I
Oh,
mean, personally, I'm okay with
Yeah.
it, but everybody else is okay with it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put words to anybody, but you wanted a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. and, second by Ms. Oliver. Mr. Whedon,
Okay, Bob made the motion, right?
correct?
Vote is open.
But I have to abstain due to, I have a business relationship through the law firm with the applicant, no, not the applicant, the owner. The owner of the property.
Mr. Whedon,
I just abstain, Bob.
all right.
Jeff, Dalton? I vote 10-1 with one abstention. The committee has approved the application of Town South Community LLC with the drafted conditions that will remain the same. And that it's for city council review. It's the 1 year and it's officially approved by the planning department, correct?
Chairman, members, thank you very much. I hope everyone has a nice day.
Thank you. Is there any further business?
I have one more thing to say. I really just want to thank Jack for, Jeff said it earlier, but, it's kind of down to the family now. And I do really appreciate your working with us and teaching us and helping us learn. And I was sitting here looking, it was only 6 years ago, and he and I were the new guys. I think maybe you two guys were on, but we've seen a whole brand-new turnover of new folks on here, and that's going to always be each year we're going to get new people. But just from my point of view, I really appreciate your working with us and the staff that you've put together. It's a real honor to be on this commission.
It's been a privilege
And
for me, thank you.
I wish you well in your retirement, and hope you come and see us on a regular basis. And
Oh, I will.
Maybe
I'll
like-
sign up. Just not like Cowboy Carol.
Yeah, we need a contentious voter so that we can't have consent agenda items.
I appreciate you always starting us off with a laugh
Yeah.
every meeting, so thank you.
At my expense.
At your expense. Thank you for being a good sport, Ed. On behalf of myself and my fellow commissioners, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today's meeting. Thank the planning department director and the staff for making this easy for us. Meeting adjourned.